Alrighty, now that we have our segue buttons all set up, let's go ahead and make it so that they have somewhere to segue to. So we are going to open up our storyboard and we're going to add in 4 new view controllers, all right? So open up our object library, I'm gonna close that bottom pane and search for view controller. And go ahead and just drag that in. And then I'm going to hold Option and drag and drop so that we keep our object library open. I'm going to drag another one in and another. All right, so now we have 4 new view controllers in here. Let's go ahead and see if we can organize this a little bit. We'll go ahead and move these up here and this one right here, and how about this one right here? All right, very good. And so these are going to be our home world, vehicles, starships, and films view controllers. So let's go ahead and add some image views to each of these. So again, I'm going to hold Option and drop in an image view here, 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 and here. All right, then let's go ahead and zoom in here. And we are going to go ahead and constrain this. So remember, first uncheck constrain to margins, then set this one to 0, left and right to 0, and then set the top to view, and then set it to 0, set the bottom to view, and then set it to 0, and say add 4 constraints. There we go. And then let's go ahead and give this the image of, let's see here, home world. All right, that looks good. And we want to set the content mode to aspect fill. Very nice. All right, let's do the same for the next. Going to set the constraints 0. First uncheck constrain to margins, 0 from the left, 0 from the right. For the top, set it to view and then set it to 0. For the bottom, set it to view and then set it to 0. And add those 4 constraints. Very good. And for this image, we are going to set it to space 3 and change the content mode to aspect fill. That looks good. Come down here, do the same thing for this one. Go ahead and set the uncheck constrain to margins, 0 from the left, 0 from the right. Select the view at the top and then set to 0. At the bottom, set view and then set to 0 and add those 4 constraints. And for this one, we'll go with space 4 and change it to aspect fill. Very nice. And finally, this last one, same thing. Uncheck constrain to margins, 0 from the left, 0 from the right. Select view, current distance, and 0. And for the bottom, same thing, view and 0. All right, very nice. And for this last one, we are going to go with space 2 and set the content mode to aspect fill. All right, so you can zoom out and see our nice new view controllers. Very pretty. And so now let's go ahead and set up our segues. So what we're going to do is we're just going to get our first button, home world button. I'm going to control and drag so that we are going to create a segue from this button to this view controller. I'm going to select show. And then for the next one, I'm going to select the vehicles button, control and drag to our next controller and say show. And then for our starships, I'm going to select and say control and drag and show. And then finally down here for our films, I'm going to select the films button and control and drag and say show. All right, so now we have segues set up from each of our buttons to their respective view controllers. And let's go ahead and run that and see how it looks. All right, let's set random. All right, and let's go to planet and then back, vehicles and back, starships and back, and film and back. All right, so you may notice, let's see here, if I can bring this up, you have that, what looks kind of like a stuttering of it. What is happening is that the image is not being cropped, which means that as the dismiss animation is occurring, there's still a little bit of image left over as it is trying to take it off the screen. So what we need to do is select each of these and say clip to bounds, clip to bounds, clip to bounds, and clip to bounds. And then I also remembered something that I messed up in the last lesson. Let's go back to our select person VC. And right here, I messed up. I copied and pasted vehicle URLs for starships. So this should be starship URLs right there. All right, that looks better. And let's go ahead and run that again. All right, select random. See if we can find one with all 4 again. Let's try this one. Looks good. Looks good. All right, nice and smooth now that we got the clip to bounds in there. All right, so I'm going to go ahead and save that. And now we're going to need view controller files for each of our new view controller views in Storyboard. And I'm going to grab our select person VC and move it into our controller folder. It hasn't been there. And I'm going to right click on controller and say new file. And this is going to be a Cocoa Touch class. And we're going to say next. And this is going to be a UI View Controller subclass. And for this first one, we are going to say Home World VC and say next and create. Then I'm going to right click on controller again and say new file. And we're going to say next. And this one is going to be vehicles VC and say next and create. And 2 more, new file, Cocoa Touch class, view controller. This one is going to be starships VC and say next and create. And finally, our last one here is a UI view controller and it is films VC and say next and create. Now let's come back into our storyboard and set the classes for each of our view controllers to match. So this is going to be our home world view controller. So I'm going to select here, set our custom class to home world VC. For our vehicles, we're going to select right here and set its class to vehicles VC. And down here, we're going to select, this is going to be the starships. So I'm going to set its class to starships VC. And then down here, this is going to be our films. So I'm going to select it and say films VC. All right, so now all of our UI view controllers here in Storyboard are linked up with their respective viewcontroller.swift files over here. Okay, and now the last thing that I'm going to do is give segue identifiers to each of our segues. So this one right here is going to be identifier of to home world. This one here that goes to the vehicles is going to be to vehicles. This segue here is going to be named to starships. And this one down here is going to be named to films. Very good. All right, let's go ahead and run that one more time. Make sure everything is still working as expected. All right, select random. And let's see if we can find someone that has both starships. Here we go, Anakin Skywalker. That is working. That works. That works. And that works. Beautiful. All right, so everything is looking good so far. In the next lesson, we're going to take a look at setting up our segues so that we can pass our person object from our home VC to whichever one that we click on. All right, so I'll see you then.